Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Craig Meriwether, clinical hypnotherapist. Please enjoy Craig Meriwether. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I'm here with Craig Meriwether, clinical hypnotherapist. Welcome to the show.
Mari, thank you so much. We were just talking off air. I was telling you how much I've been looking forward to this conversation because it's a little bit different than what I usually do. And before we get super far going, speaking of creativity, you have the best theme song ever of a podcast. I hope that's like a 4-minute song that's out there somewhere in the world
Well,
that people are
thank you.
remixing and making the dance remix and all that.
I love it. I love that.
Yeah.
It is a favorite. And I have to be honest, I literally found it on a free,
Yeah.
little website that people were putting beats and songs that
Nice.
they had created. And this was the one that I thought, that suits
Yeah,
this
that's pretty
podcast
cool.
really well. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm super excited to chat with you about creativity and hypnotherapy. So
Yeah.
before we get into that aspect, why don't you share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure, I'll do the kind of brief thing. I've actually done 90-minute podcasts about who I am and what I do. So I'll try to narrow it down to just a couple of minutes because I want to get into the creativity talk.
Mhm.
But I'm a hypnotherapist, and what I do is I help people tap into their subconscious minds for healing. Basically, this is the placebo effect. We know mind heals the body. Every pharmaceutical company that does any sort of research and puts a drug on the market has to do the clinical trials, and they give half the group the sugar pill
Mhm.
because they know mind will heal the body. They have to actually account for that in their research. And so what I help people do is tap into that power that they already have within them. We can go down the rabbit hole of consciousness and healing and what this is all about. But basically, it's just a relaxed state of mind and body.
Mhm.
The big foundation of therapeutic hypnosis is intention.
Mhm.
And what is your intention? I
Mm.
can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. That's why smoking cessation is not a 100% guarantee.
Mm.
If I can make people do what they want to do, I could go into prisons around the world and make everybody, hypnotize everybody to be a upstanding, law-abiding citizen. I could
Mhm.
go to the leaders of the world and create world peace. I get Elon Musk to write me $1 billion check. And the reason I don't have $1 billion check from Elon Musk is because I can't make people do anything they don't want to do.
Mm.
And just real briefly, people often point out, well, yeah, I saw that show in Las Vegas. I saw that show in the comedy club or that YouTube video. And I say, yeah, and every single person up on that stage dancing like Michael Jackson and singing like Elvis Presley and barking like a dog and all that, quacking like a duck. Every single one of them volunteered to be up on that stage. They raised their hand and demanded that they be chosen to be up on that stage because their intention is to have fun.
Mm.
And you can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. Now, you may not, Mari, or the listeners may not want to do that, but there are people out there who do. They're
Yeah.
extroverts, they're exhibitionists. They just want to have fun. They want to have a
Mhm.
silly night out on the town and a funny video to put on Instagram or TikTok. So their intention is to entertain, is to
Mhm.
have fun. And guess what they do? So what
Mhm.
if your intention is to heal? And so there's been lots and lots and lots of research done about this. The American Medical Association approves and uh, uh, has been researching hypnosis since the 1950s.
Mhm.
Approved and accepted by the American Medical Association, I think in like 1956, 1957. That's because the American Psychological Association approved of it. And so this isn't kind of new stuff. This has been
Mhm.
going on for quite a while, especially with experts like Milton Erickson and
Mhm.
Virginia Satir and Fritz and Laura Pearls, who came up with Gestalt therapy. They're all using this kind of work. So it's very healing. And if you ever want to go down the rabbit hole of, well, is there any research about it? Just go to Google. And
Yeah.
if you go to regular Google, there's actually a subsection, an arm of Google that only searches academic research papers. It's
Mhm.
called Google Scholar. So if you go to regular Google and type in Google Scholar, the first result is scholar.google.com. And all that does is research academic papers that have been published in peer-reviewed scientific medical journals. Just put in hypnotherapy, just put in
Mm.
hypnosis, or hypnotherapy and anxiety, or hypnotherapy and pain control, or hypnotherapy and migraines, or whatever you want.
Yeah.
And you'll find research from Harvard and Yale and Stanford and all over the place. So that's a
Nice.
bit of what I do. So
Okay, great. Well, I will say I didn't share this before we started. I'm also a therapist, so
yeah,
I am well
yeah.
familiar with this
Well, and
world
that's what I
as
was
well.
very fascinated by your trajectory because you started off, well, I mean, you still are in the arts, but
Yeah.
your trajectory of having that conversation with your parents at some point saying, oh, I'm going to college and I'm going to get a degree in theater, get a degree in acting.
Yeah.
And then to go on and get to graduate school, a master's, and go into psychology and go into somatic psychology, which is extraordinary.
Yeah.
More of the movement thing. That's a whole extraordinary conversation in and of itself.
It
How you
totally
went
is.
from
And
one
you've
to the
done
other.
your research on me.
Oh,
I love it.
I know who I'm talking to.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
And yeah, then the whole other arm of my life in the world of
yeah,
creativity. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. So,
yeah.
when you think about creativity, what does it mean to you to be creative?
To be really creative, I think requires you not to care what other people are going to think about what you produce.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, and I guess there's some caveats to that, but I think when you go into that creative mode, and whether you're writing poetry or writing a song or creating a garden, or it's just like this is what I want to do for me. This is what brings me joy, or what brings me into that space of being in the zone, and this
Mm-hmm.
is what comes out of it. Now, when I was thinking about this, because we were talking beforehand, a little bit ago, like a few weeks ago, like, oh, here's one of the questions I want to ask. And I thought, okay, well, that's an interesting question. What is creativity? And that's what I thought of. Okay, it's just not given an F about what people think about what you produce. And then I thought, but on the other hand, I've had, you've worked with people, especially you get on in years, and you hire a contractor or a handyman or something, or it's like, I don't know, this closet isn't working, or this door gets, and they come up with the most creative answer
Mm-hmm.
to the closet, or to the garage issue, or the
Mm-hmm.
door not opening well, and I think that was really creative of them to come up with that. So in a sense, I kind of almost um, went back on what I was saying about creativity. So I don't know. I guess obviously creativity can have some functional use when
Yeah.
you're doing something like, obviously, an architect creating a building.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I think that also comes from a space deep inside where they're tapping into a certain aspect of mind, body, soul,
Mm-hmm.
where, you know, and I've tapped into that myself when doing sessions with people, when we thought, or not, somebody comes in and tells me this is what I want to work on. And that's what we do. I don't tell anybody what they're supposed to be working on. This isn't talk therapy. And I'm not going to sit for months and months and months to get to know you and then tell you what your problem is and what you need to do you're going to tell me what you want to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's a problem,
Mm-hmm.
but more than likely what comes out in the session is the problem,
Mm-hmm.
because your subconscious mind wants to heal that. And so oftentimes you need to make that right hand turn where you say, okay, this is how this is going to go, and the pathway forward to this person healing this. And then all of a sudden, and when I was 8 years old, this traumatic thing happened. You're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And so
Yeah.
you have to get super creative, and
Mm-hmm.
it comes from that space within, again, heart, within soul, within mind, within body.
Yeah.
And you not only, because this, being not only a creative person on the stage, or even maybe as an actor, you probably maybe have written stuff or produced stuff, whether in film or on theater. And yet in your therapeutic work, there comes a point where it's like, okay, I thought we were working on A, and all of a sudden in the middle of it, oh, we just switched to B because this
Yeah.
is where the pain is. And so you
Yeah.
have to get real creative, real fast.
Yeah.
And so that's a long answer to say, I don't know what
I
creativity is.
love
Yes, I had my answer,
I
and then I
love
thought, well,
it
that's not
though.
right because there is a functionality to creativity, especially
Hmm.
whether you're a therapist or you're an architect or a handyman. There's,
Yeah.
and
I
you
mean,
can,
I appreciate the not knowing because I think
yeah,
so many of us have a sense for ourselves what it means for us to be creative. But when we think about creativity in the grander scheme of things, it's different for everyone. And that's
yeah,
why I love that question.
yeah,
And hearing you talk about the kind of intention with hypnotherapy and
yeah.
subconscious mind, I really think that's where creativity lives as
Oh,
well.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
we're
yeah,
really tapping into that creative space from that subconscious place, not
yeah.
necessarily from the overtly conscious experience mind.
Yeah, and I was in terms of thinking about it over the last week or so, I said, okay, it's just not mattering what people think. And then I started thinking about Spotify
Mm.
and how Spotify has changed the way people write music.
Hmm.
And that's because to get paid, Spotify will only recognize a play of a song if it's after 30 seconds.
Oh,
And so you have 30 seconds to grab somebody's attention.
yeah.
And so people are changing the way they write songs to make the hook come right away within that first 5, 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And because they want you to get to that 30-second mark or 40-second mark so they get paid. And
Mm-hmm.
then the longer you listen to the song, the more you get. And then we're talking cents, 5 cents, 10 cents, whatever it is, not huge dollars, but it's changing the way people write music because back in the day, you listen to some of your listeners, of course, know Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
There are sometimes long stretches to get to the main song.
Yeah.
People may know that U2 song, Where the Streets Have No Name. That
Mm-hmm.
has like a minute's worth of buildup
Mm-hmm.
of that keyboard part, that synthesizer part, to when you finally get to the song.
Right.
You can't do that anymore. Nobody's going to listen to that big buildup of, Great Gig in the Sky or Wish You Were Here or Where the Streets Have No Name or whatever the song is.
Yeah.
They're not going to stand for that, and they're going to switch in about 10 seconds. And but yeah, you can still be creative, can't you? Within those boundaries, within
Absolutely.
those rules. It's not unlike Netflix telling a comedian, well, we were doing hour-long specials, but we're finding people are turning it off in 40 minutes. So you only
Mm-hmm.
get 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Now you can still be creative within that 40 minutes, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's a really interesting conversation you bring to the table because what is creativity? And you may get hired to make a film
Mm-hmm.
and just, oh, we're only allowing you an hour and a half. We can read all sorts of stories in the 70s and 80s of directors getting thrown off their films because they turn in a 2.5 hour movie and they said,
Right.
yeah, the contract says 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Or the old TV shows where it's
Mm-hmm.
22 minutes with 7 minutes worth of commercials. It's not a half an hour comedy. It's 22 minutes with
Right.
seven
With
minutes or so
commercials
or
and
8 minutes of commercials.
yeah.
And so and there were those discussions they had. Well, we wrote a 35-minute episode, so is this going to be a two-parter? Is this going to be
Mm.
an hour-long special, or are we cutting stuff?
Mm-hmm.
You can still be
Yeah.
creative within that 22 minutes, but
Yeah, and
yeah.
you bring up a really important point about creativity and boundaries or parameters that we have to work within. And sometimes when people are given the blank page, that's very intimidating. But if they're
Mm,
given a blank page and a pen and they can only use black ink, there's something about those boundaries where they feel they can create, but
mm,
also to your
yeah,
point,
yeah,
some people want the blank canvas and will
yeah,
do whatever they want. And then when boundaries come in, it's really challenging
yeah.
to to share their vision within the boundaries of what they've
Yeah.
been told.
Yeah, I think one of the most fascinating pieces of art to me are movie trailers. So you
Mm.
go to the movie or wherever, you can see them on YouTube, of course, and there's all sorts of websites that just show previews. And basically what they're doing is they're taking a 2 hour movie, a 3 hour movie. Some of those Marvel movies, some of those Martin Scorsese movies are 3.5 hours. And they have to distill the vibe, the feeling, the story
Hmm.
within like what, 2 minutes? That's
Or
pretty
less.
pretty amazing,
Yeah.
or less. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And so
Hmm.
again, you have those boundaries of, well, the trailer can only be 2 minutes or less, and you have to
Hmm.
distill this 3.5 hour Martin Scorsese movie or Marvel movie or whatever down into 2 minutes. It's like that's pressure, and but you can be awfully creative with the music you use underneath it,
Yeah.
with which scenes you're using. Are you using slow-mo? Are you doing using big long cuts, or are you cutting really quickly?
Right. It comes back to the intention of how
Yeah,
they want someone to experience
yeah,
something.
yeah. Or if you've even seen those previews where it's like, oh, this is a comedy. It was that movie of, and you, some of your listeners may remember that movie Marley and Me,
Oh,
and it
yeah.
had Owen
Owen
Wilson, and I forget
Wilson and
yeah,
Jennifer
it was about the
Aniston. Yeah.
dog, and the preview made it out to be a comedy
I know.
about a dog. And so people were taking their kids to this movie because they thought it was a Disney movie, and it was like really sad. I don't
Yeah.
want to give away the movie or anything, but it was like a turns of endearment, sad cry movie, and
Yeah.
people were like horrified bringing their kids out of this thing
Mm.
because the preview made it seem like it was something it wasn't. That's being really creative because they knew it wasn't going to sell. So I say, how are you going to sell this? Well, let's turn it in. Let's make the preview make it look like a romantic comedy with a dog. They're not going to
Right.
go see that.
I
Oh,
mean, it is fascinating how people use creativity to their advantage, use it to support viewpoints and get points across and create emotion. And yeah,
mm.
speaking of just the kind of experience of creativity, what's your earliest memory of being creative?
Um, it was probably just in grade school doing little plays and things.
Mhm.
Actually, one of my earliest memories, I think I was pretty creative. I was at preschool. I was at Charlie Brown Preschool in San Diego, California. And it was kind of up on a little ridge, a little hill. And down below, they were building a new building or something. So they had tractors and trucks and all sorts of things. And so as a little kid, you want to see the tractors and trucks. And there's this chain link fence. And so I couldn't really see over to see the tractor. So I climbed up this chain link fence as a little 5-year-old. And I was looking down, watching, seeing the tractors, but it was lunchtime and they weren't working. They were just parked. I'm like, oh, okay, that's lame. And so instead of climbing back down, I thought I'd jump down. So I kind of did one of those turnarounds where you're kind of facing the other way. And I thought, okay, I'll just jump off. Well, I jumped off, but the hood of my jacket caught up on the top of the thing. So I'm just like hanging there. And as I looked around, everybody had gone back into class because it was after lunch or whatever. And
Yeah.
so it was just me. And then there was one little girl who was also not paying attention and came over and just started staring at me. And I always thought I had the greatest line. I said, well, just don't stand there, go get somebody. And I thought that was the most awesome, creative, funniest line. I wasn't funny at the moment. And of course, they had to call my mom again and say, okay, and this is what happened today. But in order to just, and the humiliation of just hanging there and just looking at this person staring up at me, I think, well,
Yeah.
that's a pretty creative line to get me out of that situation.
That
But
is. And just like the inspiration of curiosity from a kid. And
yeah.
that's
Yeah, and like
great.
creative. How am I going to go see these tractors? I know. I'll climb this fence that I'm. Why no one saw a kid climbing a fence that's blocking from falling over a big ridge? I don't know.
Clearly, people weren't paying
Things were a
attention.
little looser back in the 1970s, I think.
They might have been. This is
Yeah,
true. Yeah.
yeah. No seatbelts in the cars, drinking from the hose out in the yard.
Oh yeah.
And they
That's
used to have these announcements late at night at 10 p.m. Ask like after the news. They say, "Do you know where your kids are?"
yep.
They used to have to remind parents they had children. I
who
always,
were
whenever I
outside
have it to my
playing all
kids. Yeah.
day.
Oh yeah. There's
Oh,
nothing
yeah,
else to do.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as a hypnotherapist
Mm-hmm.
and a creative person, it seems like you have a lot of interests in your life. Who
Mm-hmm.
or what is inspiring you in your life these days?
Um, there's an artist that actually inspires me a lot, and mainly just the way he puts his art together. And he's in a gallery. I mean, there's a couple of galleries around the states or something, but there's one specifically in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And strangely enough, Santa Fe, New Mexico is like the third biggest art
Mm-hmm.
town in the United States or something. It's like New
Yeah,
York and
yeah.
San Francisco, and then Santa Fe, which is like 5,000 people live in that town. It's a beautiful, gorgeous town. Please go there if you ever have the opportunity. It's a really fun town. But there's this like 2 mile stretch, Canyon Road,
Mm.
and it's just art gallery after art gallery after art gallery. And there's one GF gallery, the letter G, the letter F. And there's an artist in there, Prima Pascal. And maybe I could send you a link
Mm.
and look at his stuff. But he uses wood to
Mm.
make these art pieces, different colored wood, different textures, different kind of grains. And I've been going to Santa Fe like once a year for the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
So just a nice place to get away um, with my wife for a long weekend or something. I always go to this gallery. I always stay a really long time looking at his stuff.
Mm.
And I can never figure out what it is about his art as opposed to the other literally 2 miles of
Mhm.
art on Canyon Road, let alone all the other art galleries around Santa Fe. And if I figured out it creates calm amongst the chaos.
Mm.
Because once you see this person's art and
Mhm.
there's lines and none of it makes sense. It's all jumbled and out of order. Not as chaotic as say like a Picasso
Mhm.
or anything like that, but it's just like this doesn't fit together and yet it's somehow calming
Mm.
in as he brings order to the chaos and the colors. And there might be a lot of black and charcoal and gray, and then just one orange stripe of a different kind of wood down the middle of it. And it always amazes me how he could do that because it
Mm.
doesn't make any sense to me. And that's
Mhm.
what I sort of like about art that, this is going to sound super arrogant, but it's like art that I can't do. It's not like I can write a great poem or I can,
Yeah.
write a great play or movie script or fiction or whatever, or paint or anything like that. But it's sort of like sports
Mm.
in that I only like sports that I know I can't do. And yeah, I'm not going to ever get in the NBA
Mhm.
or be a great golfer or be a great tennis player, but I know I can do those things. I know how
Mm.
basketball works. I know how tennis works.
Mhm.
It's like gymnastics.
Mm.
Like, how do they do that?
Yeah.
I'd never be able to do that. And so that's what fascinates me. Like swimming, I can swim. Okay, can I beat Michael Phelps? No. And I'll never be invited onto the Olympic team.
Mhm.
But I know how to swim
Mm.
and I know how to surf
Mhm.
and I know how to play golf. Am I a great golfer? No.
Mhm.
And I know how to play tennis. I sometimes get it over the net. But it's these sports that I just like, I don't know how they do that. And the
Mhm.
same with art.
Mm.
I can't write a song and I can't write an extraordinary book of fiction or poetry or
Mhm.
paint. But I sort of like, you go to the modern art galleries and I'm like, I don't know, I think I could do that. And,
Sure.
but it's like this Prima Pascal was like, I don't know how he's doing that. I
Mm.
don't know how he's fitting these things together to make order out of the chaos. And it
Yeah.
fascinates.
There's like
And
something
so
mysterious about
yeah,
how it
yeah. It's
works.
it's to me it is sheer magic. And I'll
Mhm.
send you a link and maybe put it in the show notes so people get an idea of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like I've never felt that with anybody else's art.
Mm.
And my wife and I love going to museums. We love going to galleries. I say we go to Santa Fe,
Mhm.
once a year or so, and mainly just to just wander the art.
Mhm.
And it's just the only one that I just like stand in front of. I'm like, I don't know what it is about this guy who touches my heart.
Mm.
Is this guy, not to like denigrate anybody's other art. It's beautiful and it's wonderful
Yeah.
and it's amazing. But it's just like, I don't know. There's something about that that touches me
Yeah.
in a way that others don't.
But I think that's what it's meant to do. Not everyone will like everything.
Yeah.
And so finding the pieces that spark joy or curiosity or inspiration that's the important part of it.
Well, yeah, even like music. You
Hmm.
can even pick look at like a group like the Beatles, who were only together for like 8 years, or at least their recording career were only together for 8 years.
Hmm.
And you have people, it's like, oh, I absolutely can't stand Abbey Road. I love the White Album. Or
Hmm.
White Album, Abbey Road, no, forget that. It's Sergeant Pepper,
Right.
or it's Revolver, or no, it's got to be the early stuff.
Hmm.
And it's they're not wrong. It's their opinion. It's what touches them. Or even, again, we already mentioned Pink Floyd. So, Dark Side of the Moon is really, really different than The Wall.
Yeah.
And people aren't wrong in saying The Wall is their favorite album, or Dark Side of the Moon is their favorite. They're very, very different works of art.
Yeah. The
And so why
subjectivity.
Yeah. So why does Sergeant Pepper touch somebody while the White Album touches somebody else? Or somebody says, I like Carole King and Joni Mitchell and James Taylor. Other people, no, I like Metallica and Black
Hmm.
Sabbath. It's like, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. It's your opinion,
Yeah.
or
And
or what touches you, or what you like to listen to.
right. And the beauty of creativity is that it is accessible to so many people
Yeah.
appreciating different aspects of it. I'm curious because you were saying, you know, the the sports that you do participate
Mhm.
in, you have some
Oh,
understanding
I don't
of,
participate in it. I just know I can do them.
or you can do them.
Or
Fair.
I used to do them, I guess.
But that the idea of, you know, putting in the work to get to a certain point in something. Like
Yeah.
people aren't just spontaneously doing Olympic
Yeah.
athletic things.
Yeah.
There is that effort and energy and
Mhm.
commitment and intention that
Oh
is
God, yeah.
going into it. So I'm curious. I'm just curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and again with the sports, it's not that I Serena Williams has got to be one of the greatest athletes of all
Yeah.
time. And you watch her play, and it's just like that's extraordinary. But it's also like, yeah, I've played tennis before and I've had fun doing it and
Mm.
took lessons and was in a
Hmm.
league. I mean, that was many, many, many years ago. So it's also that thing. It's like I know how to do it. I know how it works. Whereas
Mm.
something like ice skating or ice dancing or
Hmm.
gymnastics, especially the mat work, where they just or you just see those people who are like standing on the beach and all of a sudden they just kind of jump up and flip.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know how they do that, honest to God. And
Yeah.
so that gets my admiration, as
Mm.
well as Michael Phelps gets my admiration. Serena Williams gets my
Hmm.
admiration because they're extraordinary at what they do.
Yeah.
They're actually masters at what they do.
Yeah.
I've been a drummer since I was a tiny, tiny little kid. I'd get the waste baskets from around the house and the knives and just like not like butter knives or spoons or whatever,
Hmm.
and create a little drum set and play. And then they would back in the day they had Toys R Us, a big, huge 20,000 square foot building filled with toys, and you have these tiny little kiddie drum sets, and they'd get that for
Hmm.
me for Christmas. And so yeah, I know how to drum. I get it within my brain, but you also see the masters, Buddy Rich
Hmm.
or Neil Peart or
Hmm.
whoever, Stuart Copeland or whoever, my favorite people. And you're like, oh, I can't do that. I understand it.
Mm.
I
Hmm.
can't do it. And but it's and so I'm more fascinated by like trumpet and
Yeah.
cello.
I guess I'm
Things
curious.
like I don't know how they do. There's no frets on the thing. How do they know where to put their fingers?
Sure.
I don't get it. And how do you get all those notes out of three little things on the trumpet? I don't
Right.
get it. Right?
Yeah. But have you tried it? That's That's the
Yeah, I mean,
piece.
I've tried. I've a friend of mine had a cello many years
Mm-hmm.
ago, and I was like, I don't know. You pick it up, you pull the bowl across it, and it's like you make noise. I mean, I can make noise on a trumpet. I can make noise on a cello. I
Mm-hmm.
can't make music, but I can make
Mm-hmm.
rhythm on drums.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not masterful like Buddy Rich or whoever, but Tony Williams or the great drummers out there. But I can do it to a certain extent, just like I can play tennis to a certain extent,
Mm-hmm.
not to Serena Williams level, and I can't, run a
Sure.
swimming race like Michael Phelps or anything like that, or run as fast as Usain Bolt or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know how to run, and I know how to
Mm-hmm.
play tennis. Whereas some of these other things just stun me in their
Yeah.
mastery because I don't know how do you play cello, and I don't know
Yeah.
how do you play trumpet. It doesn't compute to me, and I don't know how you do gymnastics and jump and flip and twist,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't make any sense to me how you can fly through the air like that. I saw Mikhail Baryshnikov
Mm-hmm.
in this was back in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
and could only get standing room only tickets, so we had to stand in the back. And it was only because I was trying to impress a young lady that I took her to the ballet. But it was also like, oh, it's Mikhail Baryshnikov. You got to see Mikhail Baryshnikov.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, it's ballet. It was not my thing. But there was one thing I'll never forget. It looked like he flew through the air.
Mm-hmm.
There was just a point where you jump and gravity takes hold and you come back down. He defied that.
Mm.
I still see that jump in my mind. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that was seemingly impossible. I don't know how he did that.
Mm. I
And
love
so,
it.
and that's what's masterful to me is just
Mm-hmm.
seeing something that I don't know how that's done.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, like you said, the magic.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. That is
magic.
just that's beyond anything that's possible. And we look at like punk music and the punk scene in the
Mm-hmm.
70s, and a big part of that was a kind of opposite movement
Mm-hmm.
in music towards the prog rock that was happening.
Yeah.
Yes, and Genesis and King Crimson and all these groups where you were taking these master musicians
Mm-hmm.
who graduated with degrees in music and can play a mile a minute or these fancy chords and create these complicated pieces of music that switch times
Yeah.
and instead of just like here's two chords go play a song.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of you know we're all able to do this and be creative. Okay,
Mm.
maybe we can play a mile a minute and play fancy chords,
Mm-hmm.
but we still write a song.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
accessibility
yeah, yeah,
of it. Well, this has been a
yeah,
treat to chat with you. I just have one
yeah.
last question.
Sure.
What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
When as I was saying before, a lot of my creativity now comes when I'm working with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and there's that instant where all of a sudden like, okay, this isn't going down the road that we had discussed or thought it was going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden there's this, right hand turn, a left hand turn, or a wall. It's like, are we going over? Are we going around? Are we going under? Are we just blowing it up? And it's that a slight tinge of what had just happened, and then a almost a lightness and a freedom to just like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
let's just try this. The first thing that it comes to me
Mm-hmm.
is not conscious thought of, oh, the outline of this kind of work goes A, B, C, and D. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to do this now.
Mm-hmm.
And that voice or that intuition, maybe is more a better way of saying
Mm-hmm.
intuition of, oh, they're struggling and they're in a lot of pain, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
emotional pain. You need to do this now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much, you're again like you're going off a sheet of
Mm-hmm.
the bullet points of how a session works. It's just like this needs to happen.
Yeah.
And that intuition of having worked with so many people in different
Mm-hmm.
situations, like, oh, the intuition is this has turned into something else.
Yeah.
There's
So
a wall
beautiful.
there. And so, yeah. And so there's a I wouldn't say out of body, but a certain aspect of heart or mind or soul takes over,
Mm-hmm.
and that conscious mind kind of quiets down. It's like, oh, and the answer
Mm-hmm.
reveals itself through, maybe not brain, but heart or even gut,
Mm.
because I
Yeah.
know, through the research that's been going on, of course, we know there's brain cells in the brain,
Mm-hmm.
100 billion brain cells in the brain, but there's also not only a million neurons in the gut, but also about 40,000 neurons in the heart.
Yeah.
These are three different systems that think, feel, learn, and remember
Mm-hmm.
independently of each other. And so that's when, it's like, follow your heart, or what is your gut telling you to do? Yeah, I'd listen to
Yeah.
that, because these are literally brain cells, so gut cells or heart cells, that are thinking for you
Mm.
and using their memory and their feeling state to give you
Mm-hmm.
the answer.
Yeah.
So it's like either tapping in, maybe all, like, creating a synchronicity between all three of those,
Mm. Nice.
brain, heart, and gut, or maybe one of them is more dominant, but it's that intuition coming to you. And
Yeah.
whether that's using a certain color in your
Mm.
art, or a
Mm-hmm.
certain chord progression in your song, or a certain way of phrasing something in your poem or
Mm.
your fiction, it comes from like that other place.
I love
And
it.
maybe it's like all those things connected together gives you the answer. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Craig,
Yeah, you're welcome.
so
It was
much for
fun.
chatting. If people want to learn more about the work you do, how could they go about doing that?
Well, I live in Flagstaff, Arizona, and so I named my practice Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. It's a bit of a mouthful, but if you just Google search Flagstaff hypnosis, I'll show up.
Okay.
Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. I do Zoom sessions all over the place, all over the country, all over the world now. So it's not so much you have to be in Flagstaff
Mm-hmm.
or Phoenix, but find me there. Or even a easier way to remember is, I have a little test anxiety course called Ace Any Test, and you can email me from either one.
Perfect. Well, I
Yeah.
will put all of that in show notes so people have really easy access. And thank you so much for
Yeah.
taking the time to chat
Mari, it
with
was fun to
me.
talk with you. I've been looking
I
forward to this for a while.
I'm so glad, and I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.